Greetings, everybody. Today I'm here with Andy Sherman. Andy is the founder and CEO of Apex Growth Advisors. Andy has 30 years plus of sales and sales management experience with a whole range of companies, from startups to large enterprise to turnaround. So welcome, Andy.
Thank you, Jeff.
And today we're talking about how to build sales and marketing growth engines. And specifically, we want to delve into this question about how do you know if now's the time to consider retuning your growth engine, if there are fundamental changes that you need to make to get you to the next level within your organization. So with that in mind, Andy, when should you consider retuning your growth engine?
What we see a lot in terms of driving the need to tune the growth engine are external events. These can be things that are happening to the company or in the marketplace, like, for example, the need to invest or attract investors. In order to do that and to maximize that investment value, you really need to demonstrate a pattern of growth, and that can be both accelerated growth and also sustainable growth. And similarly, as a company approaches an exit and looks to sell, once again, you want to optimize the value through demonstrated growth. You also see, as an external factor, market shifts or market opportunities emerging. And in many cases, those shifts can negatively impact growth, and you need to make adjustments. And sometimes it's making an adjustment to seize an opportunity. Good example right now, we're seeing a really dramatic change and impact through the COVID pandemic has caused some companies to dramatically shift from, for example, a traditional sales model, direct selling model, to more e-commerce. And many companies have successfully made that shift in the pandemic and are maintaining their growth even in spite of all of the disruption. And then finally, an event that can really drive growth is new leadership. So in many cases, new leaders are brought into companies specifically to drive growth. And that could be a new CEO, a new chief marketing officer, a new sales officer. So these kind of external events are all key triggers to require tuning up the growth engine.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that you addressed were, if you're on a growth trajectory, maybe you've been growing at 2%, 3%, 5%, a year, and suddenly you want to change that trajectory and you want to grow at 8% or double digits, right? And that's kind of one big reason to retune your growth engine. Another is if your growth has stalled. If that traditional growth rate that you've been targeting suddenly falls off. And what are some of the reasons that growth rate would fall off like that? Well, one of them could be that your addressable market is saturated. Maybe you've been focusing on a particular market, and you've done such a great job that you've got all the customers that there are to be had in that particular industry. So then the question becomes, how do we expand our addressable market, or how do we add new products that we could sell into that same market? But how do we create more opportunity to sell our solutions? Another reason that growth can stall is if the marketplace becomes more competitive. So maybe you had first mover advantage, you were an early solution provider, or had some monopoly in a particular region, and then all of a sudden competitors have moved in and are aggressively going after the same prospects. So that's another reason to take a look at that growth engine. Another very kind of common thing is that you work very hard to find a recipe that works, that'll drive growth of your business. And then you find it, and you reap the rewards of that, sometimes for a short period of time, sometimes for many, many years. But the reality is, especially today, that those old tried and true business tactics frequently reach a point that they no longer work. And you have to evolve or die, because you're not going to continue to grow using those same tactics. So that's another reason to adapt your model. And then finally, you may be losing customers. It may be that you have, maybe if you're in a SaaS model, your retention rate is going down, and you're getting more churn. And you need to both ensure that you don't churn those customers. So what do you need to do to ensure that your customers are realizing value? And then how do you replace those customers, with new customers as well? So those are all, pretty critical, triggers and reasons that growth engines stall, and reasons that you'd want to consider kind of retuning your growth engine.
Makes a lot of sense, Jeff. And unfortunately, sometimes what we see is when all these factors hit at once in the perfect storm, and growth is really stalled out because of the multiple factors that are affecting a company concurrently.
So, and I think when you start to consider what that new growth engine looks like, I think there's three fundamental questions that you have to address. And the first question is where to play. The second question is what to sell, and the third question is how to win. I think are the three fundamental questions, and it kind of starts with where to play. So what market you want to target, and I know that you have a lot of thoughts on really focusing on the buyer need and the customer. So anything that you want to add around identifying that target market?
Yeah, Jeff, as you say, I think it all starts with the buyer. Even though my focus is on sales, and I really do focus a lot on sales process, for example, you have to start with the buyer. And in many cases, sales focuses too much on the sales process and not enough on the buyer process and what the buyer is thinking. So understanding the ideal customer profile is critical to then helping to develop your sales model, making sure that you've got the right resources at the right cost to go after those customers appropriately in a way that they want to buy. That means understanding whether this is a direct sale, whether you're using telesales, whether you're using partner channel sales. All of those factors are key. So you really need to understand how the buyer wants to buy, how the buyer needs to buy, the cost structure, your cost of acquisition, and as well as your lifetime value of the customer, so that you can develop a model that meets the buyer's requirements, but also is affordable or profitable. So you start there, and then you really build your sales process. And of course, it needs to be fully documented and instituted throughout the organization. And this is one of the things in many small organizations is neglected. But the sales process also ties back to the buyer. And then things like compensation. Sales comp, the old saw is that comp drives behavior, and that's a truism, but the behavior you're looking for has to tie back to satisfying those buyer requirements. And then finally, it's right people, right job, and right place. So this is the critical factor, is making sure that you've got the right jobs defined that fit the process, that work for the buyer, and that you've got the right people in those. So all of those factors really combine to, if done properly, match the sale and the sales process to the buying process, and to optimize the growth engine results.
Okay, well, Andy, thank you very much. I appreciate your insights on this topic.
Well, thanks, Jeff. I'm always happy to talk about, and more importantly, to help drive growth.